What's up guys, it is That Panda Guy. I'm here again with another video, and today we're going to be doing a video on our Archipelago raid from over a month ago. This was a lot of fun. I did do a stream with Z. You know, he had streamed and I had been on it, so if you guys want to check out his channel, check out those streams from during this Archipelago raid. This was, I believe, a 14-hour fight. I am splitting this middle fight into two videos, so you know you can watch both of these. And yeah, this was a really good fight. Also, real quick shout out to Breaker. I know he wanted a shout out. He was also really cool, and he was a good whale in TPL. And honestly, TPL is like one of the hardest opponents I probably fought in Elite Warzone in ever, because honestly they just have some crazy field power. They have some crazy whale power, and they were really tough. And honestly, our job here wasn't even just to hold them down. It was mainly just to hold their time, right? I honestly feel like we did really good at this, and not even intentionally. I'm honestly going to say Gold's biggest flaw here was that they tunnel visioned on us too much. I saw many opportunities where we probably could have actually lost this event, and I was surprised we didn't, because if they, you know, pushed more into, let's say, our allies, and they just decided to ignore us until we tried to drop towers on them, this could have honestly went way different than it did. We kind of just played for picks at some point, because I think we recognized, hey, we're not going to be able to hold these towers. This is just over the top for us. And honestly, we were just really struggling. This was a really rough one. We were having terrible field control. Our offensive capability was far better than our defensive capability, and we were just incapable of going on the offensive. They have so many whales in TPL that they're just going to swarm out basically any rally that you're not going to be kind of you know, holding the field on. And it's just like, dude, what are you doing? Honestly, in this situation, it's just really rough for us. So now I will highlight our allies. There isn't going to be as much footage. I do occasionally show it, but since we are fighting our own battle, I'm obviously more, focused on it. You know, I was streaming with Z or whatever, or I was on his stream. So if you guys want to check that out, you know, always check that out. You guys can see his point of view as well. Hear us in the background if you guys want to hear that. But yeah, talking about our allies, I will say, I think it was pretty obvious, but the main two legions, which were Gold and Jade, you know, and sometimes it's not the case. You know, there will be like side legions where like maybe there's a main whale there who just has like overwhelming power, and they kind of deserve to be in the main legion more. I will say in this case, I do think they kind of chose who the main legions are pretty well. You know, Golden was really strong, Jade was really strong, and Crimson in our case, right? And then Azure, who was also our enemy, they were fighting Gold, or not, sorry, not they were fighting Gold, but they were fighting Jade, which was our ally, right? And their job was mainly just to hold as long as possible, sandbag, and try to buy time for their allies. And honestly, I really do think that we would have lost this if Gold had just given up on focusing on us after they popped a few towers, hit up you know, Jade, and they tried to start building towards their checkpoint. Because I'll tell you guys what ended up happening. Basically, our allies Jade, they got a lot of free room. They managed to push back Azure, who had been doing their best to really hold, you know. Honestly, big props to Azure. They held on really well. But we just kind of played a game of cat and mouse. We just kept kind of keeping these guys engaged with us. We would build on the flank near the checkpoint, which was in like, you know, the zone 1 or whatever you want to guys call it. And we were also just building on these guys whenever they fought our allies, because there was one time I remember our allies and them connected towers. I don't remember who built into who, but they started like rallying, you know, Jade's tower or whatever, and they were just super focused on that, whereas we managed to build into their flank again, start rallying their towers down. Instead, what they could have done was just pop our tower before it dropped, you know, like refocus us, ignore a Jade for even like 5 minutes, what make us waste cement, right? Second, you let teams get towers down like this, you just give them way too much free room. You give them minutes of time, not even minutes, like this is like 20 minutes, right? They got to burn our tower, focus on us, because if they don't, we might just take advantage of that and reinitiate a push. And, you know, the second they don't focus on us, you know, we might just build another tower, but they can always pop that and burn through our cement slowly, right? In this case, we were able to just drag the fight out. And, you know, I do want to mention this, a lot of people think like if you're not holding like and this is what happened to us, we popped pretty fast. We weren't able to hold right off the bat, and we weren't able to sandbag. And you know, realistically, if we just gave our all, we probably could have sandbagged for like an hour or two, right? But is it really worth sandbagging for an hour or two, knowing you're going to get obliterated, when you can just drag this fight out like we did, right? This was like a 14-hour fight, I believe, where we just dragged it out over these 14 hours building. And once we realized, hey, we're not going to win these fights, backed up and just kept doing this. And what ends up happening is I think Gold considered us big enough of a threat, because we just kept kind of irritating them from behind. I mean, you even see how they're fighting here on Jade. We managed to build into their back, and we managed to actually start burning some of their towers and just dealing some really good damage, because these guys are split onto two fronts. We just took really good advantage of that, and I think they just kind of recognized that and said, F this, and they ended up pushing us behind the checkpoint, whereas like honestly, they could have just left us alone, given that Jade was the major threat. Our Legion was actually far more active, but we just didn't have the same whale power. Our garrisons weren't holding up as much. And I also say this, Louis Victor, you know, it's not terrible. It still worked really well, but when you're fighting a whale in like an equal or even stronger caliber, it just doesn't like really perform as good as you want it to. Like Victor isn't bad. He's, you know, pretty solid. He's a pretty good Garrison hero, but realistically, he's not like honed towards one specific, you know, troop type or whatever, right? Whereas like prefer Ethan, and I'm really happy that Ethan's a new, you know, Garrison hero. I really wish he would have been out during this event. This would have gone much better, or we would have at least held a little bit better. Yeah, I do want to say this was a good fight. Arguably, we might have been the weakest legion in like terms of just overall manpower. I do think like it was a bit surprising we were able to do as much as we did. And like I said, I think this does come down to tunnel vision. If these guys really just ignored us for the most part, they honestly could have probably won this, pulled out the W. I don't even know how we won this. This was super shocking. And like Azure was super tanky. You know, they held out for as long as possible. They even tried to go towards Jade's flank, and Jade was actually forced to cut these guys off as a result. You know what I mean? They were forced to kind of push towards their checkpoint because these guys were just like built towards their checkpoint, right? So they basically were both fighting at each other's checkpoints, at each other's throats or whatever. And then Jade ends up cutting these guys behind checkpoint. And honestly, I do wish that Jade had kind of come up and tried to back us up against Gold a bit sooner. You know, just because they were so focused on what's it called, Azure for so long, right? And I do want to say this, you know, obviously did end up getting around to doing it, and we did end up kind of coordinating and cutting these guys off. But they took so long to actually build the tower. I think they got so like distracted by checkpoint. You know, these teams weren't like, you know, as organized as maybe I would have liked them to be, or like they weren't like, you know, coordinating with us as much as I would have liked them to be. And I think they would just wanted to kind of burn out Azure. But you know, burning out a Legion is not as easy as just doing it. Once you kind of push these guys behind checkpoint, I would have just tried to tag team Golden as soon as possible, as soon as the opportunity kind of came up, you know, and showed itself. It was what's kind of happened though. They did end up doing it like an hour or two later than I wanted them to, and we ended up getting pushed back a good bit, but it did end up working out nonetheless because we did end up getting the win. So I can't really complain completely. It was just like a little bit of a frustrating aspect. Also, I do want to apologize for all the footage that I'm showing. Most of it is tower fights, and I do try to make it a little bit more interesting, cut it down a little bit more. I also have been trying to do transitions, so tell me if you like that in this video. Trying to transition from our, use like transitions to show like our fights, reports, going back and forth between like our defenses and our allies' defenses, and you know their offensives and all that kind of stuff. So you know, let me know what you guys think about that. But yeah, this was overall good. Really enjoyed it. This was like a freaking tough fight though. These guys gave us a hard time. But yeah, it was fun, man. I also want to say to you guys, I was so sleep deprived from this. I imagine our enemies were too. Like, I'm not joking. This was over the period of 14 hours. I know Z went off stream for like, I think 2 hours or something. And I think he did 2 streams like in between or whatever. But it was absolutely mental. And I don't know how we kept going for this long. And one thing that actually sucked, I remember there was like a time where we had dropped a few towers from Golden because they tried to build into us. And we basically had like 3 main rally captains, right? There was like a tank, and I forget who it was. But we also had Boss, who was our main rider rally, right? It was like a 6 million maybe rider or something like that. And then we have Big Daddy, obviously, right? And then once Boss goes to sleep, we lose one of our main rally captains. So dropping these towers is far harder. And I think like that is actually the reason they started becoming successful at dropping towers on us. Because I even remember there was a time where there was this tower that we could have dropped, but our fillers were kind of just like, you know, not as active. Maybe it was just like sleep deprived or whatever. Or maybe people were just like kind of burnt out, either or. And, you know, our rally just kind of got swarmed out and just weren't capable of dropping the tower, which it was a tower we should have dropped. It was just like a Marco defense. It wasn't anything crazy, nothing like extremely like, you know, that should have held up. So it was kind of a little bit annoying, you know, knowing that we got pushed back off that. But you notice kind of just how the game works, right? Like it all comes down to activity, being able to time yourself, being able to, you know, drag out fights like this. I mean, like we like dragging out fights for one, right? This is one reason I really love Island Raid or Archipelago Raid. It's just much more fun. You can make your team, your enemies, a lot more exhausted. As long as you're more willing to go sleep deprived than your enemy, you can pull out wins. You know what I mean? That's kind of how it goes. Genesis 4, I like it as well. The only reason I don't like it is like maybe like how fast paced it is. There's just like not as many fights, and it's much harder to kind of like use like what's it called, war tactics on these kind of guys. But yeah, it is good to have, you know, company in these calls, especially when you're doing a freaking like 14-hour fight like this. I do remember there was an Island Raid versus SMHS ages ago, well over a year or two ago. And if you guys know the story, they betrayed us, right? And I had literally been up for a day. doing like on and off. Like, thing is, you got to understand these guys are Chinese, so I was trying to time zone them at the same time. I was trying to fight them during our uptime, which was their downtime, and their uptime, which was our downtime. So I was literally fighting around the clock to try to make sure we were maximizing our trades, dragging these fights out. I was so determined to win because these guys backstab. It wasn't even us who they backstabbed. It was our allies. And then they told us like, yo, y'all sit on the side and don't do nothing and we won't touch y'all. And we said, hell no. So we pushed them and we ended up getting clapped as a result. I mean, we ended up winning the overall event because of how everything turned out. I don't really want to, wander into that too much, but it was just overall funny. It's nice to have company for these kind of fights because like sometimes I remember those, I was literally just like sitting in silence, warring it out. I mean, not even YouTube in the background, guys. Not even YouTube, guys. And also, I do want to say this real quick. Freaking props to Choopy. He's one of the most annoying whales to fight because he's like capable of going on the offensive with any unit, right? And I hate it because this guy, no matter what you garrison with, he's gonna counter you, right? And I'm not gonna like act like it's like something people don't do, but I like you don't see it a lot with whales. Usually they're not as smart enough to do that. People just like kind of ego run like their main rally. In this case, right? I swear, like if we ran a rider garrison, he sends infantry. If we run a ranged garrison, he sends riders. If we run a freaking infantry garrison, he sends range. And obviously each troop has a counter to it, so it's just like you get better damage deal off. And overall, it just was really annoying. I was like, bro, can this dude just send one troop type so I can know what I'm doing? And if you really wanted to counter this guy, you would literally have to be countering him every single time. It would literally be playing like a game of rocks, freaking paper scissors if you really wanted to counter a guy like this, and it became a game of that. And like, who the hell is trying to play that? You know what I mean? But I don't know. You guys, I'm gonna end the video off here. I do appreciate you guys for watching as always. Genuinely. You guys have a great day or a night though. GG's to everybody in this Archipelago raid. I will have another video posted soon. But you guys, yeah, peace out, and you guys have a great one.